Hi folks, this is Ian. Welcome to the 2053 movie YouTube channel. Today I want to talk about managing a big project such as a movie. How do I organize the huge amount of work over a long time? How do I deal with motivation and moments of doubt? And a very important aspect, insecurities about funding and dealing with financial risks. At this point, please don't forget to like, subscribe and tap the little bell underneath the videos. Okay, making an independent movie is not like a big project that you may have at work. Movie making means that over a long time you work hundreds and hundreds of hours, eventually without payment, and eventually you put your private money into the production, always with that risk that at the end your project might become a fail. So at the very beginning, I think it is really important to have a very strong incentive, a huge amount of motivation. Ideally, you start the project with a feeling of this is my destiny, this project has to be done and there is no choice. On top of that, you should always have a very clear vision of the result, how it looks and feels when you're done with the project, especially if you are a goal-oriented person like I am. Further, you should really be prepared for times of doubt. Even if you have that vision, there will be moments where you feel zero motivation and you want to give up. And in these times, you will definitely need discipline and persistence to just get up and do that work, no matter what. So the very first step for every big project I would like to call vision and decision. And if you do not have that, the long-term project will probably take you down and dash you into pieces, believe me. Now to the organizational part. When I started writing my movie, I was just overwhelmed with the amount of work that this project will have. And by the way, at the beginning, I still underestimated the work. At this point, it is really important to slice your project into parts. Yes, every coach will give you this advice, and yes, it is important. In my case, these parts were research and concept, script writing, scheduling and cast, production, which is the actual shooting, and finally editing. Then you can handle every part of your project as a single project, and ideally each part ends with an important milestone. These milestones you should write down with an estimated due date, pin that on your wall, and don't be a dreamer. You will definitely move your due dates from time to time, and that is absolutely okay. That's just life. By the way, the parts between your milestones shouldn't be too long, like a few weeks up to a maximum of 2 or 3 months. And each time you go into a new part of your project, you create a task list with the subtasks of that milestone. And these you can cross out one by one, and this will also make you feel the progress and keep you motivated. The second very helpful advice I can give you is outsourcing. If you feel overwhelmed with the amount of work, then I recommend that you give any possible task that you can give to someone else. The more you share work amongst more people, the faster you progress. This is just logic. And if you are the manager of a big project, it is really hard to have many more roles in this project. If you have no chance to outsource, don't be sad, just go ahead. Eventually, you may also consider to scale down your project somehow if you feel you cannot handle the project alone. Then maybe in the first place you can create a small version of your project instead of spending years and years. Just try to be realistic how much effort you are really willing to invest. With this keyword, let's jump over to the next critical part, the funding of your project. As I will explain in another video, the movie funding right here in Germany is really not too helpful for newcomers and people with innovative ideas. So movie funding is more or less provided for production companies and filmmakers that already are in the business and have good references. Fair enough, of course, the government doesn't want to burn money. Anyhow, in my case, I decided I will have to fund my project myself. So apart from the amount of time that I do invest, I will also have to set myself some kind of a budget that I'm willing to spend, which amount of money I am okay with to lose in the worst case if the movie turns out an epic fail. At this point, I cannot really give you an individual advice for your project. If you have nothing, try to fund your project with no budget. I could, for example, just shoot some voluntary actors with a phone and spend almost no money and still make a movie. If you have $1 million, you may spend this on your project, or maybe 900,000 and give the rest to me. All that is fine. Just be realistic and honest to yourself. Just in case you burn that money, at the end you should still be able to say, okay, this was a lot, but it was worth the try, period. Just a little side note, apart from the official governmental film funding, you may also try to ask NGOs, foundations and even companies for sponsoring if they are somehow related to your project. Right here in Germany, I can say that many of them turned out to not fund movie projects at all, which is a pity, but I strongly encourage you to try this as well. One more little side note about crowdfunding such as Kickstarter and Start Next. For my part, I find it too much of a hassle to set up a campaign with all that rewards and you have to promote it and so on, just to collect a few $1,000s. Just. On the other hand, if you want to collect more money, let's say 50,000 and above, in this case, I find it very hard to leave 5 or 10% to the crowdfunding website. And maybe this is also important to know, as I learned from a workshop in Start Next. Many projects get funded over crowdfunding, but at the end, a big part of the crowdfunding is actually made by friends and family. So before you start a crowdfunding campaign, ask yourself if maybe you can just ask people around you for some funding. It may sound a bit uncomfortable in the first place, but it might be much easier. Now, if you have a vision and a mission, you have scheduled your project and you have your fundings ready and you start working. It may eventually happen sometimes that you run into days of zero motivation. In this case, I recommend you to talk with people about your projects. They may or may not give you some advice, but very often they will just support you with some motivational and kind feedback and remind you that you are just on the right track. Also, remember that you have made a decision in the beginning. Sometimes it is just better to work and not overthink. Accept your own decision that I do this project and just be yourself a good employee. In this context, one more very last advice. If you are mostly working alone on your project, just find yourself a place with nice people around, such as a co-working space. During last winter, I was mostly working in Spain in a shared house with some nice company like other remote workers, and it was always really cool to have some people around. Now that I am back in Dresden, Germany, I usually go to a co-working space called Interlocal. Check them out when you are in town. There I hang out with open-minded and kind people who sometimes give me really nice feedback on my project, and this is really cool and keeps me going as well. Alright, long episode today, but I hope you enjoyed and you can make use of the advice that I gave you somehow. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and hopefully see you next time. Cheers and peace out.